Prayer Before Birth by the Irish poet and playwright Louis MacNeice was first published in 1944 in his collection Springboard, Poems 1941 to 1944. Written during the Second World War, many of its poems reflect the anxieties and fears of this period, strongly influenced as it is by the atrocities of war, the potential for human cruelty, and the loss of innocence. The poem is structured as a dramatic monologue, where the speaker is an unborn child. The child is pleading to be protected from the evils of the world into which it is about to be born. The requests it makes express a growing awareness of the dangers that lie ahead: corruption, manipulation, dehumanisation, and the loss of individuality. There is also a fear of how society will shape and twist the child's identity. These preoccupations permeate MacNeice's writing. In Modern Poetry in 1938, even before the war started, he described the modern world as broken, twisted, and insecure, a place where traditional values had eroded. This echoes the unborn child's fear of a corrupt society and the loss of innocence in the face of overwhelming evil. In his unfinished autobiography, The Strings Are False, he reflected on the collective anxiety of living during the Second World War, expressing concerns about how both fascism and communism threatened to dehumanise individuals. In one passage, he laments how war has set human beings against one another, and described it as a time when the very soul was at stake. In his essay Autumn Journal in 1939, MacNeice frequently explores themes of personal freedom and individuality, expressing fears about how easily people can be controlled or manipulated by external forces. He writes, "I would rather be a man than a dog, be a man than a cog in a machine," suggesting his concern for the preservation of individual identity and moral autonomy. The poem comprises 8 stanzas of free verse, with stanza lengths varying between 2 lines, stanza 8, and 10 lines, stanza 7. There is no fixed metrical or rhythmic structure, and line lengths vary between 3 syllables, i.e. come near me, and 17 syllables, i.e. humanity would dragoon me into a lethal automaton. A strong sense of rhythm and cohesion are, however, created through the way MacNeice structures the poem on the page, through the way he bookends each stanza with compound rhyme, e.g. hear me and near me, and console me and roll me, on the first and last line, and through his extensive use of various forms of repetition and sound patterning. The incremental indentation of each stanza from line 3 onwards builds the poem's intensity by creating a visual and rhythmic progression that mirrors the growing desperation of the unborn child's pleas. As the indentations grow, each new plea appears further indented, visually drawing the reader deeper into the unfolding emotions of the speaker. This creates a feeling of escalation, as if each successive plea is moving closer to a climax or intensifying in urgency. Anaphora, i.e. the repetition of the clause "I am not yet born," features at the beginning of the first 7 stanzas. Not only is it a common rhetorical device in prayers to create a rhythmic, meditative, and emphatic tone, but it also serves to emphasize the vulnerability and innocence of the unborn child. The juxtaposition of this image with imagery of violence and moral corruption throughout is a powerful contrast that amplifies the poem's thematic concerns. The anaphora, in reinforcing the child's pre-birth state, creates a poignant and dramatic tension between purity and impending corruption, highlighting the poem's central themes of fear, dehumanisation, and the impact of a corrupted world on the individual. MacNeice also employs identical rhyme. 19 of the poem's 39 lines end with the personal pronoun me, while there are a further 18 incidences in the body of the poem, producing a range of effects. Not only does it create an emphatic tone, but it also underscores MacNeice's preoccupation with the threat of the loss of individuality. Throughout the poem, the speaker is reminding the reader that they are a person in their own right, with all the thoughts, feelings, hopes, desires, and fears that come along with that. While there may be no fixed metrical structure as such, the way that this personal pronoun, which is always an unstressed syllable, features at the ends of clauses, gives the poem a falling rhythm and helps to add to its plaintive, pessimistic tone. Polyptoton, where there is a repetition of words derived from the same root, e.g. tall walls wall me and black racks rack me and my thoughts when they think me, adds to the poem's emotional impact. MacNeice's repetition of the subordinating conjunction of time, when, rather than the subordinating conjunction of condition, if, e.g. my thoughts when they think me, in the 4th and 5th stanzas, contributes significantly to the poem's tone. By using when, MacNeice implies a certain inevitability and finality, reinforcing the pessimistic tone of the work. When suggests that the events described are certain to occur, creating a sense of inescapability and resignation, whereas if would introduce a degree of uncertainty and possibility that could soften the overall impact. Likewise, the repetition of the modal auxiliary verb would in the 7th stanza, e.g., "O fill me with strength against those who would freeze my humanity," rather than simply reflecting its modern usage to convey a hypothetical scenario, for example, "I would go if it weren't raining," seems to instead suggest its more archaic usage to convey desire or intent to perform an action, e.g. "I would go," meaning "I want to go," and therefore creates an ominous sense of determination or potential threat posed by others. MacNeice also makes extensive use of sound patterning throughout the poem, such as alliteration, e.g. blood-sucking bat, assonance, e.g. mountains frown, consonants, e.g. bat, rat and stoat, and internal rhyme, e.g. tall walls wall, to create cohesion and musicality. The title, Prayer Before Birth, is ambiguous on first reading, as the reader would automatically assume that it is from the perspective of an expectant mother, exploring her hopes and fears for her unborn child. Instead, it is from the perspective of the unborn fetus itself, and as such can be considered a conceit. In literary terms, a conceit is an extended metaphor or an unusual, imaginative comparison that drives the meaning or structure of a work. It often presents a striking or unexpected idea to explore complex themes. In Prayer Before Birth, the unborn fetus, representing innocence and vulnerability, is used as a metaphorical vehicle to address the broader anxieties of a world plagued by war, violence, and dehumanisation. This conceit allows MacNeice to express his deep fears for the future and the corrupting influence of society in a vivid, imaginative way. By using an unborn child, he heightens the poem's emotional impact by emphasising the fragility of life and the tragic sense that, even before birth, one is already doomed to be shaped and potentially destroyed by a harsh world. poem begins with the plaintive, "I'm not yet born, oh hear me," as the unborn fetus pleads with an unidentified higher power to listen to them and to protect them. The use of the archaic "O" and the imperative mood echoes the phraseology of Christian prayer, e.g., "O Lord" and "Lord, hear our prayer." It continues, "Let not the blood-sucking bat or the rat or the stoat or the club-footed ghoul come near me." Here the speaker begins by focusing on the physical threats posed by fierce animals and monsters created through childhood fear and superstition. Note how MacNeice employs alliteration and consonants in these lines with repeated plosive consonants such as b and t, and repeated guttural consonants, e.g. k, to enhance the sense of danger. The use of a falling dactylic dum-diddy and trochaic dum-dee rhythm in these lines, "Let not the bat or the rat or the club-footed ghoul come near me," creates a prayer-like cadence and adds to the poem's sense of plaintiveness. The second stanza continues, "I am not yet born, console me, or give me comfort." The speaker's attention turns away from the lesser threats of the first stanza to those that are much more insidious and frightening because they are posed by his or her fellow humans. "I fear that the human race may with tall walls wall me, with strong drugs dope me, with wise lies lure me, on black racks rack me, in blood baths roll me." The way in which he refers to the human race en masse here suggests his belief that there is something inherently evil about us when we act collectively. When we lose our individuality, we lose our humanity. When this happens, we imprison, we desensitize, we deceive, we torture, and we embroil in war. The use of polyptoton, i.e. walls wall and racks rack, and complex sound patterning here enhance the already heavy and relentless rhythmical feel and make the imagery of torture and overwhelming force feel even more inescapable. In particular, note the internal rhyme of tall walls wall, the plosive alliteration of drugs dope, the internal rhyme and liquid alliteration of wise lies lure, and the internal rhyme, plosive and liquid alliteration of black racks rack me, in blood baths roll me, which make these lines difficult to enunciate. The use of liquid sounds like r and l in such phrases enhances the intensity of the language, as the sounds seem to roll and echo, much like the actions they describe, further immersing the reader in the poem's nightmarish tone. The liquid quality of the l and the r in these lines mirror the poem's theme of being helplessly swept up in forces beyond one's control. The third stanza shifts in tone as the speaker focuses on positive images of nature to personify it as a nurturing and protective mother figure. "I am not yet born. Provide me with water to dandle me, grass to grow for me, trees to talk to me, sky to sing to me, birds and a white light in the back of my mind to guide me." The verb dandle, used by MacNeice to describe the life force that is water, means to move or gently bounce a baby in a playful and affectionate way, while alliteration now links ideas in a positive way. Grass is associated with growth, trees with communication, and the sky to the calmness of lullabies. The reference to a white light in the back of my mind to guide me seems to be an allusion to a moral compass which will lead the way to ethical behaviour. It is possible that MacNeice meant these images to allude to the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve lived in innocence before Eve ate the forbidden fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which led to their expulsion as sinners to a fallen world. The fourth stanza, therefore, returns to darker subject matter as the speaker acknowledges that he or she shall be born a sinner. Their wishes in the third stanza to be equipped with a moral compass to guide them seem futile, as they now plead for forgiveness in advance for the sins that in me the world shall commit. In other words, the mere act of being born means that they will become a part of the human race and, therefore, be complicit in the atrocities that are carried out in their name. Note the way in which the speaker makes themselves the direct object of their own actions, to perhaps suggest that they will not be in control when this happens. My words when they speak me, my thoughts when they think me. MacNeice builds upon this idea in the next line as he pleads for forgiveness for the treason or treachery he will commit that will be engendered, i.e. brought about, by traitors beyond me, as he is forced to be the instrument of murder committed by others. MacNeice doesn't specify who the they are here, but in the context of the Second World War, it is likely that he is referring to the governments of warring nations who, safe in their war rooms, strategize and mobilize troops who will kill their opposite numbers in cold blood. In the fifth stanza, the speaker begs for support in learning how to assume his or her role in life as they come under pressure to conform. I am not yet born. Rehearse me in the parts I must play and the cues I must take when old men lecture me, bureaucrats hector me. Note the use of parts and cues taken from a semantic field of theatre to suggest that they accept that they will have no free will, but will have to play a role that has already been written for them by establishment figures, such as old men and bureaucrats. A bureaucrat is an official in a government department, in particular one who is perceived as being concerned with procedural correctness at the expense of people's needs. The verbs lecture and hector give an additional force because they almost rhyme, evoke how the speaker fears they will be railroaded and bullied into acting in a way that is contrary to their desires. As the stanza continues, the speaker builds up a frightening image of a world that is hostile, threatening and topsy-turvy, where mountains frown at me and lovers laugh at me. Given the context in which this poem was written, the image, the white waves call me to folly or madness, and the desert calls me to doom, is perhaps an allusion to the Second World War, to a battle raging across the water on mainland Europe and in the deserts of North Africa, to convey a sense of chaos and destruction. The stanza ends on an image of a world turned upside down where even the beggar refuses my gift and my children curse me. MacNeice employs complex sound patterning in these lines to enhance their emotional impact. Note the assonance and consonants of mountains frown, as well as the alliteration of lovers laugh, white waves and desert and doom. The use of polysyndeton, where there are multiple coordinating conjunctions at the end of the stanza, adds to the sense of relentlessness and inevitability which has been building. The sixth stanza is brief, with its first line echoing that of the first stanza. I am not yet born, oh hear me. In these lines, the speaker pleads for protection against both the man who is beast or who thinks he is God. Due to the fact that MacNeice wrote this during the Second World War, he could be alluding here to dictators such as Hitler, Mussolini and Stalin. He was critical of both fascism and communism, and these ideologies were personified by dictators who exhibited extreme hubris and cruelty. Devoid of any moral conscience, they had destructive and violent natures and caused immense suffering and devastation. The man who thinks he is God could be a specific allusion to Hitler, whose quest for racial purity and dominance reflected a godlike desire to shape humanity by determining life, death, and the course of history according to his warped vision. The climactic 7th stanza, at 10 lines long, is the longest in the poem. The speaker now begs for strength to oppose those who would freeze my humanity, would dragoon me into a lethal automaton, would make me a cog in a machine, a thing with one face, a thing. MacNeice's use of figurative language, such as metaphor and simile in this stanza, is particularly striking as he rails against those whose purpose is to destroy morality, free will, and individuality in order to make us into unfeeling, unthinking killing machines that are just one small, subservient part of a much larger entity. The verb to dragoon means to coerce or force, and an automaton is a moving mechanical device made in imitation of a human being. This image is clearly an allusion to the way men were being conscripted to fight in a bloody world war, ordered to kill enemy soldiers in vast numbers. The metaphor of a cog in a machine suggests that we only have value in terms of our function within a larger system, reducing individual identity and autonomy to mere utility, as if we exist solely to serve a predetermined purpose without personal significance or agency. MacNeice develops this idea over the course of the next 2 lines. He fears becoming part of a thing with one face, a thing, i.e. that his individuality is going to be swallowed up, subsumed in a collective identity that has only one face. Note the repetition of thing, which emphasizes his fear of losing his humanity. He continues, and against all those who would dissipate or dissolve my entirety, would blow me like thistledown hither and thither, or hither and thither, like water held in the hands would spill me. Here the speaker expresses his alarm that his sense of self will become fragmented. The simile, like thistledown, evokes the way thistle seeds are covered with light, fluffy hairs that enable them to be blown about in the wind. The diacope of hither and thither, or hither and thither, meaning to or towards this place and that place, emphasizes his lack of control as he is buffeted about by the winds of change. The simile, like water held in the hands would spill me, suggests the precarious preciousness of life. Water is a life-giving commodity that is wasted if not handled with sensitivity and delicacy. The final stanza is the briefest of the poem at only 2 lines. Let them not make me a stone, and let them not spill me, otherwise kill me. The metaphor of a stone here suggests an unfeeling, unthinking object. The repetition of the idea of being spilled underlines his anxiety that his life will be carelessly thrown away, its potential wasted. This stanza is made all the more hard-hitting by the way in which the compound rhyme of the first and last lines are adjacent to one another. The final line, otherwise kill me, is a bleak ending, full of despair at the futility of life and the inherent sinfulness of the human race. Looking at the state of the world in the early 1940s through the eyes of an unborn child, the most vulnerable creature you can imagine, MacNeice invites the reader to share with him his horror at what was happening and to consider the fairness of bringing a child into such a corrupt world. In conclusion, Louis MacNeice's Prayer Before Birth is a haunting and powerful reflection on the moral and existential crises brought about by the horrors of war and the dehumanizing forces at work in society. Through the voice of an unborn child, MacNeice explores themes of vulnerability, individuality, and the fear of losing one's humanity in a world fraught with violence, oppression, and manipulation. The poem's structure, sound patterns, and rich imagery serve to intensify its emotional impact, making it a poignant meditation on the fragility of life and the overwhelming threat of corruption from birth onward. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments section below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more videos on English language topics and exam techniques and English literature texts.